with an update on Edge after being kicked out of his faction and more. This is Wrestling Hub. My name is John and you're watching the Wrestling Report for June 7th. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Wrestling Hub Official and also follow us on Twitter at Wrestling_Hub. WWE announced on Raw last night that John Cena would be returning to the Red Brand on the 27th, and now Cena has responded, writing, "Been far too long and what a special occasion to be able to spend with the WWE Universe. Laredo, Texas, see you soon." With Cody Rhodes suffering a torn pec, he would announce the need for surgery following his victory over Seth Rollins at Hell in a Cell. On Busted Open Radio, Bully Ray gave some advice for the company, saying if WWE was smart, they would document his journey back. They would keep his face out there, maybe once a month. They're never going to do a weekly update, but maybe once a month to show you the story of the comeback, him training, him crying, him not believing in himself, him struggling, him coming back. You can't just let him go for 6 months, 8 months, a year and not remind the people of him. If I'm WWE, I'm keeping his face and his story going throughout his entire time. As many fans are curious regarding the future of MJF following his pipe bomb promo from Dynamite last week asking to be fired, Eric Bischoff said on his Strictly Business podcast that Max is on another level. In my opinion, MJF is without a peer. He is so good. There are a handful, 1 or 2 people in WWE who are capable of catching up to that, but there aren't many. He's in a universe all his own, in my opinion. Previously, it was reported by Business Insider that Vince McMahon was behind the company sending Stephanie McMahon home, but Dave Meltzer has now refuted this claim on Wrestling Observer Radio. I know how to read these types of articles, and this was definitely an article that they had planted and was an article burying her. It wasn't the first place that they've gone to bury her, and it's just kind of weird to me because it's like if she's gone, and it's well known that she wasn't coming back as Chief Branding Officer or anything like that if and when she comes back. The idea was that she would come back in a different role, and they were hiring people for her role. That was pretty much well known. That could have been it and should have been it, but apparently something happened. She hasn't said anything and she hasn't hinted at anything and she hasn't leaked anything that would, in theory, get them upset. So I'm really surprised. They basically planted the idea that Vince fired her, It was not what they had said, which, by the way, isn't true. She did leave on her own and that she was not good at her job. There are people who will tell you that and there are people who would tell you different. That wasn't something that nobody ever heard before, but it was not usually like when someone leaves that you necessarily do that. The only thing the article really said was that they were upset because in company sponsorship, they were way behind UFC. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful would also report that WWE have said Stephanie was not pushed out of the company. Those that were involved with WWE ahead of the Nick Khan regime were letting people know that wasn't the case, even she was pushed out before the news dropped. However, some hires in the new regime were quick to say that there were performance issues and things to improve upon, but not along the lines that it was something that caused the end of her job. Sources from both regimes say that the decision was hers. On his podcast, Jim Cornette spoke about Wardlow's victory over MJF and his current feud with smart Mark Sterling. If you're putting this guy with Mark Sterling's of the world and comedy underneath figures and doing fake stuff with him without an MJF there and for no real goal, it's up to him. They've got him this far and like it. Boy could have smashed him over for the TV title, or he could have done something to make some impact in some other way, or just give him wins and be done with that until you've got something. But don't give him a win and then put him in phony BS and people just go, Cornette would also take a shot at the booking abilities of AEW President Tony Khan. He put Wardlow over like $1 million, and Wardlow is not only more over than he was going into it because he did what he said he would, but MJF is more over than ever. He's hotter than he's ever been. He is a genius. MJF is a once-in-a-generation performer, and Tony Khan is one of the worst amateur bookers I've ever seen, who's been blessed with this guy that's able to get himself over no matter what. Recalling his time in WWE on the Two-Man Power Trip podcast, Rob Van Dam touched on his experiences with Triple H as a competitor. I mean, I wasn't happy about the situation at the time. Again, competitive state of mind. You don't look at it when you're across the ring from him and you're both competing for the love of the crowd. You don't look at it like, hey, this guy is not a CEO, but whatever his position was at the time, is qualified to make important decisions. He sits in the meetings. He's one of the guys that directs the paths of where the whole show is going. You don't look at it like that. You look at it more like, it's not fair just because he's with the boss's daughter. Really, there's so many more variables to it that you just don't consider at that time. A lot of wrestlers don't grow enough to see the whole picture. So forever, their opinion will be like it is in the book they wrote, where they're like, if it wasn't for him, I would have had a great career. But really, it is what it is. But looking back, I had great matches with him. He's a really good wrestler. At the time, I don't even think I could have admitted that, just because I felt more like puffing my chest out and trying to fight for every inch I could get. On his Gentleman Villain podcast, William Regal recalled a time in 1997 when he was flown in for an episode of Nitro but was kicked off the plane. There's an incident that happened on a plane which has been blown out of proportion to what actually happened. I got on a plane in Tokyo, should have landed in Detroit to do Nitro. I took some pills. I went to the toilet. The door was one of those old kinds of fashion planes with a concerting door. I stood there and my foot was stopping the door shutting. I hadn't locked the door. A stewardess came behind me and said, "Excuse me, sir." I turned around and nothing funny or clever about it. I peed on the lady's foot. They landed the plane and I woke up in a jail cell in Alaska. I wasn't the only person on that plane. I wasn't the reason that they landed that plane. There was a paparazzi guy in the back who flipped out and started punching people. That was the reason they landed that, and they just threw me off. I'm not going to incriminate anyone, but they threw a couple of other wrestlers off because they were doing things as well. They were like me. They won't have any idea of what they were doing, but I know what they were doing because WCW investigated this and I found out what they were doing. They got away with it. I didn't. Soon as this went to court, this lady said no, he wasn't doing anything malicious. It was just a drunken incident. Speaking about Ric Flair's final match on July 31st for StarCast, NWA World Champion Matt Cardona told Under the Ring that the Nature Boy's last bout should be for the title. Would it be too cheap to say that I want to have Ric Flair's last match for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship? That's the talk of the wrestling business right now, Ric Flair having one more match. Does he want to be 17-time champ? If he does, I have the 10 pounds of gold. I can put Sweet Charlotte on the line. Think about it. The Nature Boy Ric Flair versus always ready Matt Cardona for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Tell me that does not sell out an arena. I've heard the rumors of what the match will be, and I'm sure it's going to be a great match and fun for everybody. Don't you think his last match ever should be for the 10 pounds of gold? You think of NWA, you think of the 10 pounds of gold, you think of Ric Flair. It would be fitting that he goes out, I don't want to say on top because I beat him, but at least give him the opportunity to be a 17-time World Heavyweight Champion. That's historic. That's the match that writes itself. During that same interview, Cardona would speak about the walkout of Sasha Banks and Naomi from WWE, criticizing the two for their actions. The Z True Long Island Story 2011, I wasn't happy with my position in WWE. I didn't walk out mid-Raw. I did something about it. I changed my future. I worked my butt off. I took a chance, and I started that show. That YouTube show was all me. Editing it, writing it, filming it, putting it out. The fans took to it because this is organic. The fans saw what I was doing. They saw the quality, and by quality, the production quality was not good. They could tell it wasn't just me going to Raw, going to the pre-tape room, and someone in Stanford would edit it. This was me. They appreciated that. I formed this bond with a lot of fans that I still have to this day. You have to be ahead of the curve. Now, everyone is on the internet. Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, it's free. It's a free tool for promotion, for advertising, which is great. It's free for everybody. You have to stand out. You have to figure out a way to stand out and make people recognize you. That's tough. I'm up to the challenge. Talking to Renee Paquette on The Sessions, AEW star Toni Storm spoke about her decision to leave WWE, revealing they don't give a damn, so why should I? This isn't going to work. I know what's going to happen here. I'm just going to be sent back to catering again. I'm not going to succeed here. I can just see. I thought my whole purpose in life was to go to WWE, but then over time I realized it's just pro wrestling that I love. It's not a company that I love, I just love pro wrestling. On Raw, Edge, Damian Priest, and Rhea Ripley came to the ring to reveal the newest member of Judgment Day, which happened to be Finn Balor. This led to Balor, Priest, and Ripley turning on Edge and beating him down. With Edge kicked out of his recently formed group, WWE has apparently turned the WWE Hall of Famer. PW Insider wrote Edge has been officially moved to the babyface side of the roster. With Cody Rhodes set to be out of action for months with his injury, it makes sense that Raw needs another major babyface. Talk about MJF's promo Jake the Snake Roberts said on the DDP Snake Pit podcast. For me, it made me sick. It really did. I would love to see what the locker room is like. The bomb that he dropped is going to have repercussions with people. Taking to his podcast to discuss his recent double knee surgery, WWE Hall of Famer and Olympic gold medalist Kurt Angle gave fans an update on his recovery. "I'm not doing much better. It's pretty brutal, especially when you have both knees done at the same time. I've never went through anything this difficult. I also have a little bit of a back problem, so I can't use my back. So I'm pretty much useless. When I did the surgery, what they found a screw in my left knee just hanging out in my knee socket. From all the injuries and everything, they stayed bent. It was wearing on my knees, and that's how I got arthritis in my knees because I couldn't flex my quad extension fully, so my quad was always on fire when I was walking." And this was your pro wrestling news update. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.